ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube, it would not be a weekend of MTG without some Twitter discourse, and that is what we are discussing today. So before we get started with this video, I know this is a little bit different than what we usually do, but there was a lot of chatter around this particular topic over the weekend. Several people weighed in, and I would, just want to get some thoughts out there. Basically provide the whole story for those of you who may not know what have happened, and get your guys' opinion on it as well, because it's a very, it's an interesting topic, and it does bring up quite a lot of discussion points. Before we get started, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. So, for those of you who are not aware, this past weekend was the European Regional Championships in Ghent. That was the modern format. These players it's a very high-stakes event. Players are playing for Pro Tour invites. I believe they're giving out, I think it was 2 Worlds invites too. It might only be 1 Worlds invites. I'm not 100% positive. I know how the RC, the United States RC works, but I'm not 100% positive about the other areas. So, very high-stakes event, and during one of the rounds, this was a tweet that was provided to us from the Legacy European Tour, and these are the people who run the event in the Europe RC. These are the people who run the event. So, their tweet says, "A concerning situation happening on camera was brought to the attention of the head judges of the Regional Championship at Legacy European Championship Ghent. After a careful analysis of the situation, the head judges concluded that the player did not commit cheating." Cheating? What is this? If you've been around this game for as long as I have, you're no stranger to cheating accusations and all these kinds of different stories that you've heard over the years. The Mike Longs, the Alex Bertoncinis, the Trevor Humphreys. I'm trying to think of there was the Amulet. I can't remember the name of the Amulet cheater. But there's been plenty of cheating controversies over the years in Magic. And, I guess before we get any further into this discussion, we should probably take a look at the context. So this is the clip that was in question, and I'm just going to play it at normal speed, and let's see if we can identify what exactly happened here. It's the player on the left is the particular player in question. So I'm going to hit play, and we will see what happens here. Notably playing against Piotr Canister Glogowski. So Canister's going to crack a fetch, or rather, Expedition Map for Urza Saga. Going to put that into play and shuffle. And then we got the player on the left who is fetching, cracking a Polluted Delta, searching through the library. What do we got here? Polluted Grief. Polluted Delta can't get Grief. What's that doing over there? Okay, so that's a little strange. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a shuffle. And shuffle. Present. Can's just gonna go ahead and cut. And I believe that is the end of the clip. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch that one more time, but let's slow it down just a little bit. Let's watch 0.25 speed, and let's fast forward to the context. So here we go. Fetching Polluted Delta. I know this is slow motion, the best kind of motion. So the player is going to go ahead and sacrifice the Polluted Delta. We're going to go ahead and pick up the library. Okay, so we're searching through the library. Now, Polluted Delta only searches for an island or a swamp. To my knowledge, I don't believe that Grief is an island or a swamp. Maybe there's some, errated MH3 version that might be an island or a swamp. So puts the Grief not to the top of the library, but kind of puts it closer to the top. Okay, and the Grief is still there. So we're searching. We're going to put the Grief to the top of the... Okay, now we're putting the Grief to the top of the library, which is, again, strange, because obviously Polluted Delta cannot search for Grief, so that is a bit... It's a bit suspicious, right? I mean, why else would this person do this? What would be the reasoning for putting a Grief to the top of your library when you're searching with a Polluted Delta? Now, take a very close look at the top of the deck, because the top card, remember, is still that Grief. So we're going to do a bridge. Top card is still the Grief. We're going to do another shuffle here. Okay. So from that angle, it kind of looked like the Grief was no longer the top card. It was a tough one to tell. Top card not changing with that one. That one's easy. Top card not changing with that one. So it's that second bridge that I'm not quite sure if the grief got moved. But the next three, the top card definitely did not move. Okay. So now this is kind of a weird situation. Now, if you look at the board state, I can't quite get a good look at the hand of the player on the left, Marco. But I mean, if you look at the board state, depending on what's in Marco's hand, grief would not really be a good draw step here, right? I mean, I'm not exactly sure what I see an ephemerate. I can't quite tell if the other card is a black card, because theoretically, if the other card is a black card, then maybe you would want to draw grief. But then, even if Marco kept the grief as the top card, he still offered it to Canister to cut, and Canister did cut. So obviously, the top card was not that grief. Now, I guess the other argument you could maybe make here is that if Marco knows that grief is a bad draw, maybe he's putting a grief to the top of his library because he doesn't want to draw a grief, knowing that Canister's going to cut. But, I mean, it's a really weird situation because not only is you're manipulating the contents of the library while shuffling, and, obviously, again, as we said, polluted delta can't get grief, so why are we doing that? Now, again, if Marco, if he knows that grief is a bad draw, knowing that Canister is going to cut, he may, theoretically may want that grief to be somewhere in his deck and guaranteed not on the top of his library. But it's a really weird situation. Now, again, it's really, really hard to say. I've watched this a couple of times. Some people were saying that Marco was just preventing clumping, where sometimes you do this where, you're searching through your library for whatever, a fetch land, or you cast a rampant growth, and you notice there's like, 3 or 4 of the same cards in a row, and you just kind of move those around to make sure that those are not stuck, quote unquote, stuck together. But then that begs the question, is doing something like that library manipulation? Because to my knowledge, any sort of library manipulation, regardless of intent, would be considered, I believe that would be considered cheating, because you're manipulating the contents of your library, and even if you're not directly putting a card on top, Marco, in this instance, now knows that relatively that there's a good chance that there's not going to be a grief anywhere on top of his library. Now, he doesn't know what the top card is, but does know for a fact that it's less likely to be a grief because there's one grief chunk somewhere in the middle of his library. Now, is this direct and 100% convinced that this is cheating? I don't know. I still don't really know how to process this, excuse me. But, there was a couple of opinions on Twitter that I would like to bring up here. First one, this is from Misplaced Ginger. Again, all of these are not my opinion. These are the opinions of the people who posted these tweets and comments. The first one we have here from, again, Misplaced Ginger. This is one of the most egregiously wrong rulings I've ever seen on something that is so cut and dry. And then goes on to mention, exactly what happens, and there's some debate here on the tweet. But this was specifically Misplaced Ginger's context on it. And then Gabriel Nassif actually kind of fired back a little bit. I don't have a specific tweet. I couldn't find anything on Gabe's Twitter, but this was a Twitch conversation rather that he was having in Misplaced Ginger's chat, because that's actually where this kind of stemmed from, is he saw Ginger's tweet and then kind of I watched a little bit on his stream where he was kind of getting upset and going off, and then there was more conversation directly directed toward Misplaced Ginger in Ginger's stream. And then Canister, who this was the person who probably has the most relevant opinion on this because he was against the person in question. And Canister says, talk with head judges and opponent convinced it was a mistake. Cheat seems either useless or overcomplicated. Most plausible explanation to me is the habit of unclumping cards before you shuffle. You shouldn't, but many will with no malice. Ruling seems fair. This is a bit of a strange one. I couldn't find any other super I couldn't find any other tweets that were specifically mentioning this. I mean, there's a couple other ones, replies to this tweets, and you can go check out all the tweets and things in question. This is a really tough one for me because, it begs the question, if you're searching through your library and you notice that there's a couple of cards stacked together that maybe what you would prefer them to not be stuck together, like, example, if you see 4 swamps in a row and you're searching through your deck and you don't want to, you think in theory, okay, well, if these swamps are together after I shuffle, cut, present to my opponent, and then I draw a swamp, the next card after that is more likely to be a swamp. But that's not even necessarily true, because you go through your deck, while you're searching, you see that there's 4 swamps there. You complete your shuffle, you complete your search, and then after you search, you shuffle and then present, and your opponent is presented with the opportunity to shuffle or cut your library. So the shuffling that you're doing after searching should be preventing that clumping from happening anyways. So again, and I've definitely have done this in the past. I am 100% guilty of doing this, and I'm sure every single person who's played Magic at all in their lifetime, who's played tournament Magic and just even casual Magic, has done this too, where you just want to unclump those cards and you don't want those cards to be together. But should that be considered library manipulation? I don't know. That's kind of what we are trying to figure out here. That's what we're trying to ask. At the end of the day, to be honest with you, I think it was probably just exactly this, what Canister is saying. I truly believe that it likely was just, person who saw a couple of griefs in a row, maybe was trying to unclump them, happened to be on camera. I guess the weird part about it to me is that they took the grief, right? They didn't immediately put it to the top. They put it halfway through and then finished shuffling all the way till the end of the deck. And then when they went to that same grief, then they put it on top. That was kind of the weird part for me, because at least when I've done this in the past, when I've, sort of unclumped or declumped or whatever, you kind of just like take it and put it somewhere else in the deck, but you don't move it again after that. So again, I don't think there's any specific malice or anything of intent here. I think it was just kind of person just made a mistake on camera, and again, it was on camera and there was a lot of people watching this stream, so everybody notably got very upset, and the Twitter mob rather. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think anything should come of this. I think the ruling was fine. Again, if the judges investigated, you have to realize that judges are on site and are on staff for a reason. These judges are very well experienced in they're very good at what they do. They know what to look out for. They know what they're looking for when trying to find out cheating and things like that. So I like to at least give the benefit of the doubt to the judges that they did their due diligence, and maybe a little bit to the player that, again, it was just a simple mistake. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't think it should have maybe been blown out of proportion as big as it was, but that's Twitter for you, folks. But be sure, this is the most important part. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Should this be considered cheating? Should this person have received a more harsh penalty? If you saw your opponent do this, would you call a judge? I want to hear what you guys think. So let me know in the comment section down below what you thought, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.